today we are so excited to have April on with us, which is so fun. She actually was a part of What's a Fertility in Charleston before this podcast even happened. So it's super cool just to be reconnected and have April on with us and just to hear her story about adoption and now pregnancy through IUI. So we're so excited you're here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you. Well,
I
if you kind of want to just even like go to the beginning, I guess, and what even led you guys to go and do like traditional adoption. I don't know the whole story, so I'm excited just to hear all about it.
Yeah, gosh, I feel like it's been such a long journey. And it's so funny because people always ask, like, how long were you trying? And I'm like, that's like an interesting question to ask someone. It's like, let's talk about their sex life. But I also think it's like interesting because, I mean, we just celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary. And I feel like, I mean, like stopped using any sort of protection like 2 years into our marriage and like nothing happened. But I was also like, not really actively trying. So it's not a big deal. And then I guess like 5 or 6 years ago, we like started actively trying. Um, Always kind of knew in the background that I could have fertility issues. I had a pretty bad eating disorder when I was younger, and there were just some things that doctors said, like, this could eventually be a challenge down the road. I don't know if y'all can hear my dog losing her mind in the background. Um,
Yeah.
but this could be a challenge down the road to get pregnant. So that kind of like always stuck with me. There was like no medical diagnosis that said, oh, this is going to be an issue getting pregnant, but I just kind of kept that with me. Um, I have always wanted to adopt. I don't know if it's part of like just knowing I could have issues getting pregnant or what, but like that was just always in the back of my mind. Even in college, my husband and I were talking about adopting one day.
Mhm.
He so it just kind of was like part of our story. We knew adoption would happen, just we weren't sure in like what regard. He had when he was in law school, he had done a kind of like a internship at that's probably not the right term, but he had gone over spring break down to Panama and worked at an orphanage doing legal work for them. And so we always thought we'd do international adoption. That was kind of always our plan. Um, and so kind of fast forward to, gosh, 2019, I think is really when we realized, okay, this is not working the way we thought it would. We had, at the time, we were living in San Diego, making the move back to Charleston. We're originally from North Carolina. And so we realized this might be a little bit harder, started down the road with, the fertility testing, just at like the OB, nothing like looking back, I'm like, I should have just gone straight to a fertility clinic, but you don't know what you don't know. And discovered there that I had diminished ovarian reserve. And so they were like, you definitely need to go to a fertility clinic. And I that was like March 2020.
Oh my
And
God.
so I'd made an appointment and we had it scheduled, and then it got canceled because of COVID. And I really looked at it as like a blessing of, hey, like this maybe we just need to rethink all of this. Like, do we want to adopt now? Do we want to go through this? I was also like in a really bad mental health state because I think I mean, y'all know what it's like from trying and then thinking you're pregnant to not being like it just had done a number on me. And I had I had convinced myself, and I still like, I've had so many doctors say, like, it sounds like you were pregnant, so you need to believe that you were pregnant. But I had like what we think is like a very early miscarriage in like January of 2019, and then was never able to get pregnant after that. So that like really did a number on me. And so I already knew I like wasn't in a good mental health state. And so like pumping my body full of hormones, I was like, this may not be the best idea for me right now in the middle of a global pandemic. I don't know, just
Fair.
throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Um, so we like talked about it, we prayed about it a lot, and we were like, let's just adopt. Like let's just start looking into things. And we quickly found our adoption agency, got on the phone like the next day, and it just felt right. And so that was kind of how we got brought into the adoption world. Um, Obviously with COVID, we knew that international adoption was likely not going to happen, which was fine because as we kind of got into the adoption world, we realized we really wanted an open adoption if, it was safe for all parties involved. And internet, I mean, I'm sure you can in some capacity have an open adoption, but not in the way that we have an open adoption. And so we really, learned more. We really wanted an infant. We wanted to experience everything that everyone else was experiencing, just without the pregnancy. And so, yeah, signed up with an agency, I think in like March of 2020. And then, or not March, excuse me, May of 2020. And then we adopted our son in May of 2021. So it was actually really fast for us compared to a lot of.
Sure.
Yeah.
This background is so interesting for me because before you jumped on, I was telling Amanda, I remember meeting you and you come to this fertility group and you're kind of like, yeah, we've never tried fertility treatments. We're not really interested in trying fertility treatments, like have infertility to my knowledge, but we're adopting and we're so thrilled about it. So it's so interesting to hear the background. And I think that's so neat too. I was like, I don't think she tried like reproductive treatment, like or third-party treatments before adopting.
Yeah, I didn't. And I always wonder, like, if COVID hadn't have happened, like, would I have gone through with it? I don't know. I think I'm not saying COVID was a blessing in disguise because, like, obviously it was really terrible. But I think it just gave me a pause. And I think I struggle with controlling things. Like, I need to be in control. I have issues there. But I think taking that into my own hands just gave me like a lot of clarity, a lot of confidence, and really helped. And so that, I don't know, I'm so glad it happened the way it did. I mean, obviously I can't imagine our life without our son Worth now. I mean, he's wild, a truth three-nager. Um, but yeah, that was not the right timing for us to do fertility, but I am glad that, to get to baby number two, we did go through all of that. So I almost feel like we did things a little backwards than what a lot of people do, but
Yeah.
it worked for us.
That's perfect. And I love that you're sharing that too, because I think sometimes people are like, I'm supposed to try all these things before I move into a different season. But I do. I remember you walking into that meeting and you, like, to me, I didn't know all this background, but to me, it was just like, I'm confident, I'm at peace. This is exactly what we're doing. I'm here just to kind of like mingle and support, but like, I don't want to hear what you guys, I don't need to do any of these treatments. Okay. So Worth came into your life May of 2021. And like, I know you and your husband, didn't you guys, I feel like at some point you tried to loop some stuff in with your law firm or marketing with adoption. Is that right?
Yeah, so we run a marketing agency for lawyers. So my husband doesn't practice like traditional law. Maybe one day he'll go back to doing that. But we've been doing marketing for lawyers for about 6 years. We do have like business ideas where we would love to do something with adoption down the road. Like we keep throwing out ideas, whether it be like a SaaS product or something like that. Because I mean, there's definitely parts of the adoption process that are still very old school and
Yeah.
you know,
All
oh,
the paper forms and
yeah.
yeah.
It's just everything's like a little behind. And I'm sure every agency is different. I can only speak for our experience. But we have all these ideas. And I mean, running a business and we have 9 employees now, we just have not had time to like focus on that. We talk about it all the time, but yeah, I definitely think down the road that's something that we would like to do, but it hasn't come to be.
Yeah. Amanda and I can understand that.
100%. I get it. We have so many ideas like in our head that we talk about, but have not actually executed. So
Hard,
we get that.
especially with little ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so your adoption, do you want to talk any more? I know adoption can be very touchy and what part of his story you want to share or not, but anything else on the adoption? But really he's almost, you said he's 3, so you guys waited a little bit before, I guess, jumping into fertility treatments.
Yeah, I mean, so it was pretty fast for us. I mean, there's so many different ways you can go about adoption. And I think something that I learned that was a little eye-opening was you can say what you're open to and what you're not open to. And I think as I've talked to a lot of people, just to be a resource for them as they have tried to go through the adoption journey or trying to figure out if that's even what they want to do. I think that's a question I hear a lot of, well, what about this? What about that? Um, so at least with our agency, you could rate things on a scale of like 1 to 5, like 1 being like, I'm not really open to this situation at all. 5, I'm like totally open. And they say to like limit the number of threes, because that's just hard for them. Um, as we were going through and you do so much education in it, like I felt like totally prepared for, at least as prepared as one could be for a lot of different situations. We were really open to pretty much anything. Um, we had done a lot of transracial adoption training. We had really prayed about it, talked with our families. We were convinced that we were adopting a child of a different race. And we felt very prepared for that. Like, I think when we went to the training, they did like a training day. And I was like, I don't know, maybe we wouldn't be the best family going into I just want to make sure for whatever child this is best for them. And when we left, Tyler and I looked at each other, we were like, we are definitely good to go. Like, like we will learn, like
Yeah.
we will learn whatever needs to be learned in order to make this child thrive. So totally prepared, really open to any situation. Um, we ended up getting, so let's see, our everything went active live in like November of 2020. And then in January, we were actually coming back from our baby moon. So we tried to do everything like, traditional that people do. We were coming back from our baby moon and we got a call from the agency that we had been identified by an expectant mother. I obviously can't go into too many details about that situation. Spoiler alert, it did not work out. But there was a lot of challenging things about that. And I think some other families had turned it down. So we were not her first choice. And there was like some legal things going on. Criminal things, all of that. And I think every other family was like, absolutely not.
And
Tyler
that's
had,
important. And that's kind of important too when one of your
yeah,
main goals is open adoption. It's like, how does that lifelong relationship look with these situations?
Yeah.
exactly. And that was something that our adoption specialist had talked to us about. And, we talked about it of like, hey, like this would not look the same. Like we're not going to be going in and out of a prison with a child. But Tyler had interned for the public defender. And so, he had seen different sides of the legal system that I think most people hadn't seen. And just obviously doing what we do, we have a lot of attorneys who are criminal defense attorneys, and we're really big on access to justice, and that's a whole nother story. But we were open to the situation and what that brought. I think the expectant mother was kind of confused on why we were so like, yeah, we're open to this. And
Right.
it's a very long story that I can't get into details on, but it did not work. She kind of went silent on us about a month in, which was really hard. It was a little girl. We were so excited. I even had friends that had like sent little girl outfits and all of that. Like we were so pumped. We had already started talking about names, which looking back, I'm like, maybe that was a little premature, but you're so excited.
Yeah.
And we were kind of in this limbo of like, okay, we hadn't officially met her. So, I mean, everything was just communication between attorneys, adoption specialists, all of that. And so we were trying to plan a meeting that never happened. And so our profile was never taken down to say they're like a matched family. And I remember them talking to us about that. Like, do you want that? Typically, we recommend waiting, but if you feel like you want it down, and we were like, no, let's just leave it. Well, in the meantime, we were identified by worse
Oh,
birth mother. And so we were kind of in this limbo of like, we knew it probably wasn't happening with this other family. But she was so excited to meet us. We were her first choice, everything. And we were just really confused. They were due, I think, like 4 weeks apart. So the little girl was due in April, Worth was due in May. And so we didn't tell anyone and ended up going, our adoption agency was in Greenville, South Carolina, and they lived kind of nearby. And so that was our like meetup spot. We met her. I was so nervous and she was just wonderful. And like before, we weren't even halfway back to Charleston, and she had already called saying, "Hey, I want them to be the family. I want them to take their profile down, all of that." And we were like,
thank
Wow.
goodness.
what? It was like truly crazy how it happened. Um, and it's such a and I feel like bad sometimes talking about it, especially when other people have gone through the adoption process where it's like, oh my gosh, you had these two families at the same time. I'm like, right, but like we were so into one, and like
Yeah.
mentally we had gotten there, we had talked to attorneys, we had done all of this work, it felt like, and then to just walk away, it was like you don't want to make the wrong decision.
Right. And that, gosh, that's such a big decision too.
Yeah, it really was. And I when we decided to kind of step away from that other situation, I was like, I don't want to know anything. Like, don't, if she comes back, like, just don't tell me.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, we still talk about that situation to this day
Mm.
and always wonder about that little girl and hope that she's in a good place. But who knows? I think Worth is totally our son. And like, that was the right decision and like exactly what was meant to happen.
I love that. That is so beautiful. And just like how amazing, I'm sure that feeling of like literally just driving back and she already just knew and picked you guys. Like
Yeah.
to have that true, like, okay, like these babies can be ours. Like it's gonna be, yeah, I'm sure that's like the best feeling.
It really was. I think there was definitely some fear in it after having a failed adoption the
Sure.
first time. And we honestly didn't tell our families for, gosh, probably a month. We did a few, I think we did 3 or 4 meetings with the birth mother and the expectant father before we even like
Told
told our
anyone.
families. And it kept getting closer. And I was like, ooh, this looks like it might actually happen. And we should maybe warn some people and, tell our team. Um, so yeah, I think there was definitely challenges in that. Every state has different legal ramifications of adoption and what that means. North Carolina is actually a little bit more strict than South Carolina. Um, Birth fathers in South Carolina do not have a legal right, or expectant fathers, I should say, do not have a
Isn't
legal
that,
right.
I learned that during my process. I thought that was, I mean, I get it, but it's also kind of wild. And then I think it's like also like complicates the process because then can't they come back after like for X amount of time?
I'm not sure because for us, it was really important that Worth's birth father was involved. And even though at the time he wanted to parent, he wanted to do everything, yet he didn't have the legal right to, which is just a
Oh,
whole nother
wow.
situation. Like it was really difficult. And so we really wanted to make sure that we met with him, we developed that relationship. He felt comfortable with us. He was not there when she was in labor or born. Um, and we were actually able to be in the like room like 30 minutes after he was born. I was like, I did the first skin to skin, I did everything. Um, so that was like really incredible. And I owe that all to his birth mother and her mother who made that happen in the middle of a global pandemic when like you literally were only supposed to have one person. It's like Tyler and I sneaking
Right.
into the hospital, it felt like. Um,
Right.
and so that was really special. But, he did end up signing the papers, which his signature was not required, but it was important to us that we had it. Um,
Yeah.
I would say we actually talk to him and his family more now than we do the birth mother.
Oh, wow.
Um, I think, all of this is going to come in and out of with waves of where they are in their lives. They're pretty young. But yeah, I mean, I was texting with his mom last night, which is crazy. We're like closer in age to his parents than them, which is makes you feel really old. But they're very young too. So I'm like, okay. But we text all the time, we send pictures, we do all of that. So yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting. I think a lot of times the birth fathers sometimes aren't even known or aren't included in anything. And it was really
Yeah.
important for us to do
That's
that.
very unique and beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, and so that was a very positive experience. It sounds like, I mean, for me watching it on the outside, I was going through this process at the same time. So it's just very educational for me and hopeful for me to watch you guys go through such a positive experience. At what point were you like, maybe we want another kid?
I knew I needed a year. I was like, I need people out of our house, like a year after finalization. So, you wait. Every state's different. So he was born in May, we finalized in October. So pretty quick. But I was like, I need people like out of our house for a year before I like open back up.
Yeah.
And I just was not ready a year in. Like I was just really enjoying where we were and also felt so fatigued from the whole process. And work was like really busy and just felt good where we were. um then I was like, when he turns two, we'll do this. And then he turned two and I was like, oh, I'm still not quite ready. Like, they say
We can
terrible.
relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he was a great baby. He is a nonstop toddler. And I was like, what is happening? I mean, he is all boy. I never understood that phrase.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, he's all boy and just not quite ready. And I don't know, looking back now, I'm like, was I not ready to adopt again, or was I not ready to have another child? I don't know. But we started doing research. We started calling adoption agencies. In the process of worst finalization, our adoption agency shut down. So at least in South
That's
Carolina.
right, because I wanted to use them and I was like devastated because you had had the best experience and it was right
Yeah.
when I was starting and you're like, actually, I think they just did their last case.
I was like so devastated because I
Yeah.
knew, I was like, okay, we're gonna have to go through all this again. It just felt so easy and just the perfect fit for us. And it still exists nationally, but just not in the state of South Carolina, unfortunately. And all of their staff actually went to this other agency in South Carolina. And we did calls with them, and who we use wouldn't even, like, our adoption specialist doesn't even oversee that anymore. And I was just like, there were,
Complicated it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, things got very political, I think, in the adoption world as well, and as well as fertility, which can be a whole nother topic. But I think when we started the adoption process, we didn't go to the agency because they excluded anyone. We went because they were referred by a family friend, and we had a great experience talking to them. And so I think as things had kind of come to light on why they shut down and lost funding and all of that, I was like, okay, this is now important to us that we're not excluding certain families and just a whole list of things. So I felt like as we were interviewing these other agencies, they were like, this girl is crazy. And I was like, listen, these are things that are important to me. And I want to make sure that you understand that. And it may not be that we're the right family for you either. So we quickly nixed that agency off that the staff had moved to, unfortunately, because we loved all the staff. It just wasn't ethically, for what we believe, was not the right agency. Ended up finding one that we really liked, and we were like, okay, like we're gonna start this probably at the beginning of 2024. That was kind of what we had said. And in that process, I was like, why don't we just go to a fertility clinic, do some more testing, see if anything's changed? Like, let's just make sure, I'm 34. Let's make sure that we've exhausted these options to the limit that we want to exhaust them. And so, went back, still diminished ovarian reserve. Ended up doing, oh my gosh, I cannot remember the procedure. Y'all would probably remember, where they like flush your fallopian tube.
HSG.
Oh my God, horrific.
Oh, that's so funny because it's not
Everyone's
funny that
so
it's
different.
I was gonna say it's not funny, it's horrific, but we hear it's either horrific or it's absolutely
Like totally fine.
non-eventful.
Yeah.
I mean, I shot up like out of like the not bed, but you know, the
Yeah.
table, and Tyler came running over like, what? I was like, oh my God. And there was like no warning of like this could really hurt bad. So I think
Yeah.
if I mentally prepare myself for it, then I'm okay.
Yeah,
But I was like
fine.
not prepared.
The
Oh,
only warnings are on the Reddit boards when you type in
yeah, right.
HSG.
It might
I
hurt.
mean, mine was, and it's typically the very first procedure you do when you go to
Yeah.
your fertility clinic. And so you're just kind of like, it's all new, but mine was so uneventful. Like, she was like,
Same.
"Are you good? Are you comfortable?" I'm like, "Yeah, like, I'm fine. I don't feel anything."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
they
so
knew I
funny
was
how different it
uncomfortable.
is. Yeah.
Like they were like, this girl may not last doing all this stuff. But I did
Yeah.
have a blocked tube. And
So
so
That might
I'm
be why
wondering if,
then.
yeah, I'm wondering if
yeah,
that has plays into it. Because I guess if you're pushing fluid and it's blocked, I'm sure that's the pressure is painful.
yeah, I was like, you got to get this thing out. And we didn't end up going with that fertility clinic, let's just say.
Oh,
Um,
we got to talk offline. I want to
yeah,
know
we'll
who.
talk offline. I feel like I've kind of went through all the ones in Charleston, even, but I didn't really do things that so
Right.
for me, I'm all about a vibe. And I know we have a mutual friend, Sarah Boyd, and our kids are good friends. And I'll say they're both troublemakers in the same daycare.
Oh,
And
cute.
so she had no idea that we had Worth was adopted.
Oh,
And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm a nurse practitioner at Preg. And I was like, oh my God,
yeah.
I've always wanted to go there. We live in Mount Pleasant. And so Somerville, I mean, I don't know. What do you say? Like 30, 45 minutes, depending on traffic
On a good day.
on a
Yeah.
on a good
It's
day.
like
And
not even that it's far, but yeah, it's if you're gonna go routinely, that's kind of a
it,
deal.
exactly. And so I was like, I don't know. That's honestly the only reason why I've never been. Like, I've heard great things about it. And she was like, just get a second opinion. Like, that was all she said. I was like, all right, all right. So
And they do free second opinion, so it's just so easy.
it's so easy. And so we went, I immediately loved our doctor. She's no longer there, but like immediately loved her. And something that she said, because was explaining her whole story, and I always went in not wanting to do IVF, not for the reasons of like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have to preface that now. Like I am so for IVF, but I think mentally I knew what I could and couldn't handle. And I think also, I mean, it's unfortunate that you have to think about the financial side, but I was like, one round of IVF could literally be an entire adoption. And
Yeah.
so the fact that we were like on board to adopt again, that was just kind of our
And I
like
love that. I love
limit.
having boundaries. And like, I haven't even shared this with Amanda yet, but I'm at the point where people are like, do reproductive immunology. And I never had these boundaries. I was like, I'll do anything.
Do
And
whatever.
at this point, yeah. And at this point, I'm like, you know what? Like, no, I'm not. That's not something
Yeah.
that I can mentally and emotionally handle right now. And I think that's okay. I'm even trying to come to terms with that. Yeah.
I think what's interesting about that too is that people don't really talk about that. They're like, I did years of this, years of that. I had never heard someone say, here's your boundary, here's your limit. And that's what she told us. She said, whatever you decide to do, you need to have a limit to it. Like, I'm going to do X rounds of IUI. I'm going to do X rounds of IVF or, whatever it is. And so we really talked about that for a couple months. I love the way she explained it
So
is,
she was on our podcast.
no, I'll have to go back and listen.
Yeah.
She's
Dr.
amazing.
She's amazing. Dr. Catherine Snow, she was on our very first season. I think it was episode 2 or 3, but she had her own infertility journey. And so she's been through this as a reproductive endocrinologist. She's been through the loss. She's been through the IVF. So she just has a really, really great
Oh yeah,
perspective. And I think a
incredible.
great way, yeah, to communicate with patients. I love that.
It's so nice that when you have people on your team who have been through it because they see the emotional side too.
For sure.
And I just love the way that she described the difference between IUI and IVF. And like I knew this, but no one had ever described it this way of IUI is less invasive, less expensive, less effective. IVF is more invasive, more expensive, more effective.
I
And
like that.
yeah,
I
I
know
was
I've heard
like,
that before, but I mean, it makes sense.
yeah, like put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like this, like
Right.
people need to know this.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I think I could do IUI. Like I think the biggest thing for us is that I didn't want to not try and just like walk away and always wonder, like me be in my mid 40s and be like, well, should I have done?
Wonder.
I just didn't want
Yeah.
any like what ifs. And so we did the, what is it? The hysteroscopy because they
Uh-huh.
thought I had polyps from the procedure at the other clinic. They were like, let's just take a look, make sure everything's good, do all of that. Of course, I wake up in a whole different world and they're like, there was no polyps. And I'm like, well, why did we do this? But they were like, everything looks great, like really good. You can actually get started on fertility meds, like with
Wait,
your
can we go
like,
back to your blocked tube?
yeah,
What
yeah.
happened with that? It's just blocked and it wasn't blocked?
So I asked Dr. Snow about it, and she said, sometimes they'll be blocked and then they'll like come unblocked. She was like, she said, I don't want to put you through that procedure again. And she
Right.
was like, let's, 'cause I was like, she even said, she was like, I know it's not comfortable. I said, it was the most horrific thing I've ever
Right.
experienced. And she was like, let's just see how it goes. And if we are finding that things aren't working, then we can possibly
Oh, that's
retest.
good.
And so I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And I just felt very confident with the entire Pregs team's approach with everything. Like I was like, I felt like they knew what they were
They're,
doing.
they're not pushy. I feel like they really listen. They kind of are like, what do you want to do? And we'll see where we
Yeah.
can support you. Yeah, I love them too.
It like so perfect, exactly what we needed. And so we started the like pills medication right after Christmas. And then did our first IUI in January. I did have like one follicle. And so I think like, taking the medicine, taking the trigger shots, I definitely think it helped because like who knew? I mean, you don't know these things. Like, am I actually ovulating? Like you take a
Right.
test.
Yeah.
I'd never even seen a positive ovulation test, but they told me I was ovulating based off of blood work and
Yeah.
everything. Um, but that one didn't work. And then in the process, my granny passed away, who was like my favorite person in the world. She was so excited for us to be on this journey again. And I remember going home to do all of the funeral arrangements and everything and like taking my 500 pregnancy tests with me and doing all this and finding out I wasn't pregnant and I was just like the hands in the I was like this year is not off to a good start. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't do the second IUI because of everything that was going on. Um, Ended up stepping away from work for a little while, which was, I mean, it's so nice owning your own business, being able to say that. I know not everyone's able to do that when you deal with loss, but thankfully I was able to do that. And ended up doing the second IUI. I was like, let's just do it. Why the hell not? And it worked.
Oh my,
And I was like, wait,
so
what?
crazy.
Like,
Do you know that I think you might be like only the second person on the show that's had success with IUI? Like it is
girl,
such a small
it
percentage.
is.
And I love that you're on because this gives hope. Like I know a lot of our followers are like on their sixth, their seventh IUI, and like it does work. It's just not talked about a lot.
It's so
It's
true.
not. And sorry, I told Dr. Snow that. I said, I have so many friends that have done IVF. I've had friends that have done IUI. I know no one who has had success in IUI. And she goes, oh, I have, I have. And I was like, okay, in my head, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
All right.
Like,
like
okay.
I'm sure it works.
Yeah.
And it
But I
did.
was it worked. And it was so funny. Like I was taking the test
I
and the
mean,
line
after
was
8 years.
literally.
That's
I was
why.
like, this, but it could have been the trigger shot. It could have been a lot of, but I really waited the 2 weeks. What? Yeah,
Yeah.
could you wait 2 weeks? And there was just so much going on. I think I just wasn't even thinking about
Yeah.
it. And I was like, I've got to go home. I've got to close out the estate. I've got to start all these things.
Right.
And I was like, we got to go get a digital test. I was like literally in my childhood home, and I was like, never did I think I'd be taking a positive pregnancy test and
Oh,
be jumping up and down
that's kind of
like
cool.
at my home. And
Yes.
we saw the words like pregnant. And obviously we're so excited. And Tyler's like, I knew it would work. I said, you knew it would work after 8
Thanks
years
for,
of this.
yeah.
You just knew it.
You're
Like,
like, thanks for telling me now.
yeah, thanks. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's, baby's healthy, baby boy, we're I'm 27 weeks, so 28 weeks
Wow.
on Monday, which I guess is like the third trimester. I know some people are like 27, 28, whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different opinion, but yeah, we're here. I still can't believe it's real.
I know. I saw your announcement and was just like, wait, what?
I,
That is just, he's due in November, right?
November, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. How has it felt? Have you had a decent pregnancy? How has it felt being pregnant? Like, how has all that been for you?
So I have been very sick. I have had HG, so the hyper, however you say
Me
it.
too, hyperemesis. Yeah. Well,
Oh
you look,
my,
you're like, you're doing great right now, which I will tell you, third trimester is
yeah.
significantly better. Yeah,
I am only taking diclegis right now for nausea. I mean, I was taking Zofran
me too.
every 6 hours. I mean, I had an alarm set
Yeah.
on my
And
phone.
if it went 6 hours and 2 minutes, you're done. You're in
Oh,
bed, you're done completely. And it's not even like it helps, but it doesn't really
oh
take it away.
no,
I can't,
you're
yeah,
you're just not actively throwing up.
exactly. I can't imagine doing that with a toddler. That's been one of the biggest things for me of like kind of hesitating to do all this again.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler is a godsend. I mean, I am
Yeah.
definitely not getting any wife or mom of the year awards this year, but he has taken on the majority of the parenting this year, just
Yeah.
with things that I couldn't do. I mean, we would play this game where Worth would watch the Zofran dissolve on my tongue, and it was like a fun game. And I'm like, that is parenting right now. Like that is what
That's
I'm
great.
doing. Um, so yeah, thankfully that the nausea and vomiting's gone. It's still a little there, which is why I'm still taking the diclegis, but
Yeah.
I have weaned off of it. But that was really hard. And everyone kept saying it'll get better about 12 weeks. And
Yeah.
I was like, I no, I
Mhm.
literally think you're lying.
And I think that's so hard to have that diagnosis after infertility because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm finally pregnant and I'm going to go through this little morning sickness. And then you're like, wait, I'm throwing up like 15 times a day. I can't even go out and like have my bump and like go get like, go to dinner with my friends and be pregnant and do all the fun things. Like I remember even like on our pregnancy announcement, I was like throwing up outside of the pictures and it was miserable.
It was horrible. And I ended up getting I was prescribed something that I ended up having a reaction to and ended up in the ER with it, which was really fun. And then went to because I was trying to avoid Zofran, you hear all these
Right.
things. And my dog, literally, I'm in my first like OB appointment, and because you're at the fertility clinic for a while and then they release you. I mean, I walk in with a vomit bag and she's
Mhm.
asking me questions and I'm actively throwing up. And I'm like, Tyler,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to answer these. And she was like, we're gonna stop. We're gonna get you an IV. We're gonna like, she was like, I
Yeah.
don't typically do this, but I think you're gonna need it. Um,
Yeah.
and
It's
I mean,
hard. It's tough. I'm so glad you're almost done.
no, it definitely has made it hard though, like you were saying, Kat, like after going through fertility and doing that. I think the blessing in disguise was I was so sick that I didn't have a lot of time to be worried, you
Yep.
know? So that was nice.
Yeah.
Um, but I've kind of taken it in chunks, and I have a couple other friends who are pregnant right now after years of infertility as well. And something that like we talk about is, let's get to this milestone, let's get to this milestone. And so we're, I guess at viability or close
Mhm.
to it. And so
Yeah.
that's definitely reassurance. But I'm like, is he moving enough today? Like, should I be counting this? Like, I'm definitely becoming like almost like a crazy person, it feels
Yeah.
like
Oh, for sure.
that. But it's just the journey.
Thank you for sharing everything with us. I mean, what a beautiful story. And I think like, if anything, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, she had IUI work. This is incredible. Like, I want to hear kind of how that happened. But even more so, I just love how you kind of did what you wanted to do. And from the first day I ever met you, I was like, she is like blocked everybody else out, and this is exactly what she wants to do. And she's so confident in her path. And I just think that's so beautiful. And I hope that listeners can hear from your episode, just like the allowance to do that. You don't have to do the 3 rounds of IUI, go into IVF, then go to XYZ. And I think Amanda's story is very similar to yours. Like, I want to do embryo adoption, and I know what's right for my family, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think you know what's right for your family. And I think you just have to listen to your intuition and kind of, I mean, it's so great having communities of people who have gone through this, but I think sometimes it becomes a lot of noise of like, well, should I be doing that? Should I be doing this? And I think you just have to stay focused on what's right for you and your family, even if to the outside world it feels a little backwards. It's like, that's fine. Like, however you want to build your family is totally fine. And who knows? I mean, we may adopt again after this. We may do so. I mean, I feel crazy saying that, but I'm like, who knows? We may feel complete after this. We may be like, let's keep going. I don't know.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, April, for sharing your story.
Thanks so much for having me.